What do you do when a wall stands in front of you that looks impossible to climb? After Ehud's victory, Israel enjoyed 80 years of peace, the longest calm the nation had ever known. But peace made them forget God again, and this time, the enemy that came for them was unlike anything Israel had faced before. 900 iron chariots. The most terrifying war machine in the ancient world. Against that wall of iron, God raised up two women nobody saw coming, a warrior prophet named Deborah, and a quiet stranger named Jael, holding nothing but a tent peg. This is the day the impossible got rewritten. The 80 years of peace after Ehud's victory felt like it would last forever. Children grew up never hearing the sound of war, laughing freely in open fields. Families brought in harvest after harvest, grateful and full. But comfort has a short memory. Once the pain of the past was washed away, the same old sickness crept back into Israel. Spiritual amnesia, spreading like a plague. We're doing fine on our own now. Why bother with all of God's strict commands? Little by little, the people traded trust in God for trust in their own comfort and in Canaan's prosperity. That quiet betrayal always comes back around. And this time, it came back as steel in the north. King Jabin of Hazor had been building an army no one in Israel could have imagined surviving. When word spread that Jabin was on the move, all of Israel froze because Jabin didn't just have soldiers. He had 900 iron chariots. Picture a battlefield where the enemy is fighting hand to hand, and 900 modern tanks roll in at once. That's the terror Israel felt. When those iron chariots thundered across the plains, the ground itself shook. And the noise alone was enough to break an army's will before a single sword was drawn. Standing behind, Jabin was his commander. Sisera, a general who had never once lost a battle. His name alone made people's stomachs drop. Under Sisera's iron chariots, Israel suffered for 20 brutal years, long enough for a newborn to grow into a young adult. Never knowing a single day without oppression, finally crushed under the weight of that iron. Israel hit the ground and cried out, "God, save us, please." Not from swords this time, from steel. God is endlessly betrayed and endlessly merciful anyway. He heard the cry, and this time he raised up a leader nobody expected, not a warrior, not a strong man, but Deborah, the only woman in Israel's history to serve as judge. And a prophet besides Deborah didn't carry a sword. She sat under a palm tree in the hill country of Ephraim, listening to the wounds of a people who'd lived under oppression for 20 years, and speaking God's justice and comfort into their pain. People traveled from all over Israel just to sit under that tree and ask her one question. In a world full of iron chariots, what is God telling us to do? The reason people trusted Deborah wasn't her strength. It was that she listened to God's voice before she looked at the battlefield one day. Under that same quiet palm tree, a command from God broke the silence. Deborah summoned Barak, one of Israel's most capable commanders, and delivered it word for word. "Barak, the Lord, the God of Israel, commands you, take 10,000 men from Naphtali and Zebulun, and march to Mount Tabor. God will draw Sisera and his 900 chariots to the Kishon River and hand him straight into your hands." It was a direct promise from God, and Barak was still terrified. He looked at Deborah and gave his answer with a condition attached. "If you go with me, I'll go. If you don't go with me, I won't go." Deborah looked at the fear on his face and answered quietly, "Fine, I will go with you. But understand this, Barak, because you would not stand up when God called, the glory of this victory will not be yours. The Lord will hand Sisera over to a woman." Barak assumed she meant herself. He had no idea what twist God had actually written. The day of battle arrived. Deborah and Barak led 10,000 Israelite soldiers up Mount Tabor. Sisera heard the news and laughed, then lined up his unstoppable weapon, all 900 iron chariots, filling the plain below and the banks of the Kishon River, looking down from the mountain. That wall of iron was enough to stop anyone's breath. How are we supposed to beat tanks with no weapons of our own? The second we go down there, we're finished. Right as fear started spreading through the ranks, Deborah's voice cracked across the mountain like thunder. Get up, Barak. Is this not the day the Lord has given Sisera into your hand? Look, the Lord himself is marching out ahead of you. At those words, something changed in Barak's eyes and in the eyes of 10,000 soldiers behind him. They surged down the mountain with a battle cry, straight toward the iron wall. And what happened next broke every rule of what should have been possible. The sky, clear moments before, turned black in an instant. Thunder cracked. Rain came down in sheets, the kind that doesn't stop. The Kishon River rose and spilled over, and the solid plain turned to deep mud in minutes. Canaan's pride, 900 iron chariots, started screaming. Wheels sank. The harder the horses fought to pull free, the deeper they sank, tangled and stuck. The single most feared weapon on earth had just been turned into 900 tons of useless scrap metal. By one storm, Israel's soldiers watched it happen and felt something ignite in their chests. Look, the chariots can't move. God is fighting the sky itself for us. They charged. Sisera's army, the army that thought it couldn't lose, collapsed into chaos. Soldiers dropping their weapons and running for their lives. Even Sisera himself abandoned his chariot and fled on foot, barefoot in the mud, kicking up dust like a common foot soldier just trying to survive. He ran and ran. No destination, just distance. Throat burning, heart pounding, and then he saw it. A tent belonging to Heber the Kenite, a clan that had kept peace with Jabin's family. Sisera thought he'd found safety. The tent belonged to a woman named Jael. Jael stepped outside, saw the general covered in mud and shaking, and greeted him gently. "Come in, my lord. Don't be afraid. Come this way." Relief washed over Sisera and Eli's tent. He ducked inside. "I made it. I actually escaped Israel's blade." Exhausted and desperately thirsty, he asked her, "Please, give me a little water. I'm so thirsty." Jael opened a skin of milk instead and let him drink his fill of something warm and rich. Then she covered his tired body with a blanket. Comforted and safe, Sisera's breathing slowed, and he slid into a deep sleep. The general, who had terrorized an entire nation for 20 years, now completely unguarded, completely helpless. The moment his breathing steadied, the air inside that tent went cold. The gentle look on Jael's face sharpened into something entirely different. This was the moment Deborah's prophecy, "The Lord will hand Sisera over to a woman," was about to come true. Jael picked up a tent peg in one hand and a hammer in the other, and stepped silently toward the sleeping general. Then, without hesitation, she drove it home. Sisera, the unbeatable commander who had crushed Israel for 2 decades, died right there, killed by a woman who had never held a sword in her life. Minutes later, Barak arrived at the tent, still hunting for Sisera. Jael stepped out calmly and said, "Come, I will show you the man you're looking for." Barak walked in and stopped cold. The Iron General, who had made all of Israel tremble, was lying dead, pinned by a tent peg, exactly where he'd fallen asleep. Barak felt a chill run through him as Deborah's words came rushing back. "The glory of this victory will not be yours. It will belong to a woman." Every word of it had come true, exactly as spoken. After that victory at Mount Tabor, Jabin's power collapsed, and Israel finally broke free from Canaan's oppression completely. When the war ended, Deborah and Barak wrote a song of praise to the Lord of hosts, one of the oldest victory songs recorded in Scripture. declaring how the earth shook and the heavens poured out water at God's arrival. How he used the weak to shatter iron. After that victory, Israel enjoyed 40 more years of peace. Here's what this story leaves us with. Israel looked at 900 iron chariots and spent 20 years paralyzed by fear. There's no way we can beat that. Not a chance. But to the God who rules the universe, 900 iron chariots were nothing. One storm, and they were scrap metal. However massive the problem in front of you looks, it's maybe nothing at all to the Lord of hosts. And God didn't choose the famous, strong commander everyone was watching. He chose a woman judge and an ordinary woman with a tent peg, the ones the world had written off. What matters in God's story was never strength or weapons. It was simple faith that trusts and obeys. But even this bright victory started to fade with time. As the 40 years of peace came to an end, Israel turned from God again, and this time, a strange new enemy came pouring in from the east. Unlike anything they'd faced before, camel-riding raiders from Midian. They swarmed in like locusts, stripping every field and every herd bare. Families lost their homes and were forced to hide in mountain caves just to survive. And in the middle of that despair, God once again ignored everyone's expectations and went looking for the single most fearful, insecure young man in the land, hiding in a winepress, threshing wheat in secret out of fear of the enemy. To that trembling coward, an angel appeared and said the last thing anyone expected. "Mighty warrior, the Lord is with you." The story of how the man who saw himself as the weakest and smallest, Gideon, became the leader who shattered an army of 135,000 with just 300 men. Next episode. Judges Part 4, From Coward to Hero, The Calling of Gideon. The twist with torches and trumpets begins.